And for my second video of the day, shalom, shalom once again. This is Phone and Show. Welcome here to the Rock. This is a question because I get a lot of input and a lot of comments and emails and texts and stuff like that. And one of the things that I have noticed, so I'm asking y'all, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people equate to the falling of what is happening in this society to what's happened to other societies. And I, for one, don't necessarily think that there are direct correlations. I know there are some things that are just humans do it. This is just humans, or sin does it. But I believe that when we compare ourselves to a lot of these countries that have lived impoverished or third world, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. Because see, this country as a whole, when's the last time they really experienced a serious nationwide situation? I mean, you could say the zombie plague, but prior to that, you could very easily, you're going back to what? A real situation, what, the Great Depression? See, people in this country have become very, very spoiled. While in other countries, this is why I don't necessarily directly correlate what's happening here to what's happened to countries that have been living notoriously poor, because the poor in this country are rich in a majority of other countries. They are completely rich. The poor people that have access to food are completely rich to other countries. The fact that you can go to a food bank, the fact that you can get an EBT card, the fact that you have all these services in this country shows me that you can't see, I don't see the direct correlation of how maybe what happened in Brazil or what happened in Venezuela and comparing it directly with what's happened here or what could happen here. People say, well, this is how people are going to act because I lived in this country and this is what happened over there. Or I was in the military and this is what happened over there. Well, you can't compare your experience here to your experience in Afghanistan. There may be correlations, but you can't find that you can't directly compare it, because look at how they've lived in Afghanistan compared to over here. Look at how they've lived in a lot of these regions. They've been at war for decades. But here in this country, you can literally find yourself and buy yourself a piece of property or buy yourself a house in a nice, region of, Beverly Hills or whatever it is, and you may never experience any of that sort of stuff. It kind of is also the same thing how when I see people who compare, crap is the fan, and they immediately assume that gangsters are dumb. That gangsters don't know how to move through a bad situation. Well, if you've never lived in those areas, you never lived in a hood, it's hard for you to even talk about what gangsters are going to do. Well, gangsters, they're going to do this, or they're going to do that, and they turn the gun sideways, and that's how they shoot. And you believe that. You literally believe that gangsters turn their gun sideways when they shoot at people. Because you've never lived there. You've never seen how they shoot. You've never seen how proficient a lot of these people are. So you assume, because you've watched it on the media, you've watched it on some music videos, that that's really how it happens. Then you find out that most of the gangsters today are trained by gang members that went in. They were recruited by the gang and sent to the military to learn military tactics, to take those military tactics back to the streets so they become more efficient. And if you look in, Mexico, look at a lot of the gangs now. They're special forces groups that were part of the military. They're ex-soldiers that were part of the military. The same thing has happened in these streets today. So for you to compare it and say, well, shit hits the fan, is going, they're just going to come out here and turn the gun sideways, you're foolish in your talk. And it's the same thing. I see the comparison when people say, well, I lived in Venezuela, and they immediately start trying to directly correlate Venezuela or Iraq or Iran or these areas that they lived to a first world country that is spoiled. People today, this country right now has a obesity problem. They're saying, I read some studies that said that by the year 2030, 50% of Americans are going to be fitting in the category of obese. 50% by the year 2030 are going to fit into the category of obese to morbidly obese. Which means that we are on that pathway now. So that means that there's an abundance of food in this country. There really is. So how are people going to react when there isn't an abundance of food? When they're not used to, they're used to eating this, that, and the other, and they're not able to get that thing that they want to eat. Look at your Black Fridays. Look what people are willing to do for a television. For a television. I don't see people in other countries rioting to get their PS4. I don't see people in Africa rioting to get their hands on the new PS5. I don't see people in Afghanistan rioting because a new pair of Jordans came out. I didn't see people in these countries rioting and literally trampling each other to get the toilet paper. I didn't see that. This country, the people here are not used to any sort of nationwide problem. People were committing suicide over the zombie plague, over social distancing. Literally, committing suicide. I remember back in the housing crisis when, was it 08, I believe, when things went down, people were killing themselves. Bankers were killing themselves. You go to a third world country, you go to these countries where that's life every single day, where people are blessed and happy to have a mud hut. You think that they're killing themselves because they can't afford to keep their 4,500 square foot house and 6 bedrooms? And do you think that they have that problem there? The thing that I see is in this country, we are completely unaware. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people actually know what's going to happen if things were to continue to go downhill. We don't know because this country and the people, these generations have never experienced it. Just being honest, the things that you see people fighting for today is they're fighting for the right to go use any sort of bathroom they want to. You got male swimmers who want to turn into women and fight for the right to go swim with the women. That's what they're fighting for in this country. In other countries, people are fighting for food. In this country right now, they're fighting so that they could wrestle with women. They want to be on a women's wrestling team, but born a man. There's no correlation. So how do I think people are going to act here? I have no clue. But I don't think you can compare it to countries where people have notoriously they've lived a life without excess. So I don't see the direct correlation. When I look at this country, I say people get mad over here. People are shooting up drive-through because they got their Burger King order wrong. In other countries, Burger King's a luxury. If you just had some bread and some water, maybe a handful of rice and some greens to throw on it, man, you had it made. You can't compare. This is why I believe that in this country, there's going to be a benefit for people that live outside of metropolitan areas when things go down. Because let's just be real, the average American doesn't keep enough gas for himself to travel. Just being real. And the average person in this country, we're talking about a 50% obesity level by the year 2030. I didn't look at the levels of obesity right now. How many people are willing to walk 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 miles, 90 miles to get from where they are to any place? Honestly, the West Coast is going to become it's going to be bad. Because how many people are going to, let's just say, an issue goes down and people have to travel. How many people are going to be traveling out of the West Coast, out of California and Arizona? How many people are going to be walking through those deserts to get to where it's lush and green? People barely can walk today. Go to your average Walmart and you see the motorized carts are all over the aisles. People walking and they have to lean damn near halfway on their cart just to get the cart through the aisle. People aren't in shape like they are in these other countries. They don't travel like that unless they have a vehicle. Most people don't have cows. Most people's backyards are not big enough to sustain life for themselves. And the reality of it is more people are more inclined to stay where they are before they have to travel. That's just the reality of it. They're inclined. You look at people today. Look at what the zombie plague showed. The zombie plague showed, yes, there are people that were willing to relocate, but how many people relocated? Most people said, hey, things are just going to continue to get better. And that's the normalcy bias. People are going to sit back and say, things are going to stay better where I am. Somebody's going to fix it. And by the time they figure out nobody's going to fix it, they'll have damn near wasted all the gasoline in their vehicle. They'll have eaten up all the food in their house. They will, because you see that today. People in third world countries or countries that aren't even really third world but aren't as where people aren't as they don't have the luxuries that we have here in this country, they understand that sort of stuff. They understand that they'll have to move and relocate. I've met plenty of people that served in the military. These people in these countries know how to live. They know how to survive because they've been surviving that way for decades. In this country, we don't know how to do that. We don't. So to compare our experiences here directly as if they're going to correlate with the experiences that you've had in other countries, I believe is not wise, because they've lived different lives. And they've lived it generationally. They've passed down the information of how to raise goats and how to get water in desert areas, and how to farm and garden, or I don't want to call it garden, but how to farm when your soil is less amendable. And they find a way to live. They know what kind of diets their bodies need because they were raised from childhood up, from a baby up, on that diet. Your average American is raised on the diet of what? What you eat at the grocery store and what you get at the fast food restaurant. And if prices get too high and people are priced out, where are you going to even get the money to travel across the country? Where are you going to get the money to relocate yourself and your family? I think that we have to be very wise when we take the stories that we read in other countries and directly appropriate them to this country. Two different societies, two different ways of living. Most of us have never even come close to living that. Your average American has never even come close to that sort of lifestyle. Never even come close to the idea that you would have to raise your own food. Even come close to what their body needs. Most of us, to be honest, aren't even active enough to go on it. I mean, if you told your average American, hey, I want you right now to pack what you think you would need in a backpack and walk 30 miles, they wouldn't make it. Most of them wouldn't even have the footwear to walk 30 miles. Most of them wouldn't have the energy to walk 30 miles. Most of them don't even know how much water they need to walk 30 miles. Most people are not even in a good enough level of health to walk 5 miles, much less 30. It's something I just want us to think about, something for us to ponder. While I do understand that there are many things that we can learn from the lessons of other countries, I don't necessarily think that it applies to a country that has notoriously been at the top, who expects to be at the top, where the people expect to be at the top. People in this country don't expect to suffer, ever. They don't expect to ever have to go through tough times, ever. And that's why when people have to go through tough times, they lose their minds. They lose it. Psychiatric help has been needed just over this zombie plague. Over the course of this zombie plague, people were filing in to get psychiatric help because they didn't. A lot of men realized and women realized they didn't even like the person they're married to. Anyways, don't want to ramble on too much. Just want to cover these things. Thank you all for all those who comment and give me these ideas, things to talk about. Anyways, bless y'all. I'm out. Shalom.